This episode is brought to you by Windrose Recovery, a family of premier addiction treatment programs in southeastern Wisconsin. Privately owned, Windrose Recovery offers a full continuum of personalized care for those struggling with addiction, including the Manor for residential treatment, Midwest Detox for inpatient detoxification, and Windrose Counseling for outpatient treatment. With highly personalized treatment focused on trauma, Dr. Chantel Thomas and her expert team offer an authentic experience, creating the kind of deep emotional change that's crucial for long-term recovery. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, call Windrose Recovery at 414-409-5300. You can learn more about Windrose Recovery by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting windroserecovery.com. Thank you for listening to The Path to Authenticity. My name's Tom Gentry. I think of this show as the opposite of small talk. You'll hear real conversations with real people who know who they are. We talk about what makes them who they are, how they became who they are, and how we might become truer expressions of who we are.
I'm Chelsea Gage, and this is The Path to Authenticity.
The Path to Authenticity proudly supports the I Speak Media Foundation, advancing media literacy education through an evolving series of outreach programs within the communities that need it most. For more information, visit ispeakmedia.org. If this is your first time here, thanks for checking it out. If not, thanks for coming back. I'm Tom Gentry, and this is The Path to Authenticity. Episode 98 features Chelsea Gage, who is a yoga teacher and a new mom and is very kind and also sort of a badass. No, she's great, and we had a really nice conversation. But as I sit here, it's Saturday, December 5th. I just spent a half an hour recording a little mini episode that I do for the Patreon page every Saturday. So the people who join there and become patrons get a little bonus episode. But anyway, I just recorded 33 minutes of audio and published it before I realized I had the wrong microphone on, and it sounded like, once I listened to it, that it was, I don't know, recorded in a power plant or something like that. So, needless to say, I'm still figuring this out, this podcast thing, but overall it's been going pretty well. Thankfully, as I was recording it on the laptop for audio, I was also recording it for video with an iPhone. So the sound is fine there. I'll be able to publish it a different way. But yeah. So that was interesting. Anyway, I'm pretty excited, coming right up on episode 100 here. This past week, I interviewed Chelsea on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, I interviewed Heather Sundquist Hall, who was in episode 43 and also did the commemorative artwork for episode 100. Prints of those, you can get them at her site. I'll leave a link in the show notes. But we did a little short interview for episode 100. That's going to be kind of a compilation episode where I'm, going to put clips from many of the different episodes, the first 100. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited for 2021 to get through this year to get on the other side of 2020. Anyway, I hope you all are doing well. Hope you enjoy this episode. Chelsea's great. Here you go, Chelsea Gage. Into this pandemic now, it's getting pretty old, but I can't really complain.
I feel somewhat of the same. It's definitely been an interesting year, but we're still here in South Florida, and I was able to go out to the park today and be with my daughter, and so it's still a nice, not too bad of a year.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really been the beauty of it, is that it has, if we're open to it, it's given us the opportunity to deepen our connections with ourselves and with the people we care about, So it just kind of makes me sad when I see people who are all caught up in wanting things to get back to normal.
Right.
This is like a great opportunity, really, in some ways, as sad as the illness part of it is.
Absolutely.
I feel like it's just a hard reset for all of us to reevaluate everything, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's definitely asked us to, especially now, be more mindful of how we're interacting with one another. And so with Florida being such an open state, I still see my grandmother probably a couple times a week. So I have to be very cautious of who I'm coming in contact with, because she would be one that is, susceptible to getting even more sick if something were to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you are a yoga teacher and the director at the studio where I have practiced. And, being a guy my age, mid-40s, and starting to practice yoga really for the first time, I drove by that place. I can't even tell you how many times thinking about going there, but I had some fear to overcome to do it. And part of it was, I don't want to look like a creepy old dude. What do I wear? It's going to be, aside from the fact that all these people are going to be better at this than I am, there was just a lot about it that intimidated me. And how I got through that was I became friends with the guy who's been practicing for like 9 years. And, I just told him what was happening with me.
Yeah.
And I asked him to be my accountability partner. And I asked him, like, what do I wear? And he's like, okay, go get these shorts. And, that was, so that was a big help. But then what was cool is when I made it through the door, you guys were great. You were all so warm and loving and supportive. And, I was new and I could ask questions and not feel stupid. And, I felt supported and encouraged. And it just opened my eyes to this whole like subculture there is of healing in yoga, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because people feel as though they're alone in feeling that intimidation. And I can't tell you how many emails or calls I get just about like, well, what do I wear? What should I bring? And once I think we get over the hump of just starting, once you come into the door and into the studio, it's truly just a place of community. And it's not even, it's a place where we do yoga, but I feel like it's such a labor of love of my aunt and I that we've poured so much of how we feel about just how we conduct ourselves. I believe like within our family, within our community, that we've tried to bring that to the studio and bring that to to yoga, and I want everyone to feel what you felt when you walk in, is that it's a warm environment where you're encouraged. You can ask questions. There can be, there's no, I don't want there to be fear or exclusivity around yoga. I want it to be just a place where people can explore their own intuition with it, and feel love doing it. So I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. Well, and by extension, you specifically, there was a moment that, I don't know, it was a morning class, like on a weekday a couple years ago. And,
was it the early morning, the 7:30?
I think it was 9. It might've been, it was a vinyasa class. I mean, it was a Chelsea class for sure. But, yeah. Which is a thing for those of you listening. Chelsea has her trademark sort of class. But so I hadn't really done any back bends yet to speak of. I was still pretty new and, wanting to reach some of those sort of milestones that make you feel like you're getting somewhere,
Sure, yeah.
And, I was doing bridge, but had never gone up into bow before. And there was this moment, and I was like in the front row. I must have gotten there late because I never tried to be in the front row. And you like kind of prodded me. You're like, just do it. Like, just, like, just push yourself up. You did. Like, you gritted your teeth a little bit and you just pushed me. No, I mean, in a good way. And, and just, it was like a coach. And it, it took me back to some of the most important people in my life, like my Little League baseball coach. And, like my mom was like that, there's a fierceness that came out, and but it's rooted in love and support. And, I mean, you just wanted me to lift myself up a little more, and I went all the way up.
Yeah. I think I remember that exact moment too. Yeah. I think you surprised us both too, because you went all the way up.
I did. Yes. I didn't expect to. It just happened,
Yeah.
But yeah, and I, one of the things I talk about that I feel like has influenced me in a really positive way is growing up with 5 older sisters.
Oh, wow.
And, they're all kind of like that. They're all, none of them are pushovers. They all have that kind of fierceness to them. And it just felt like home when that happened, It was really nice. So that's when you won me over if you hadn't already.
Oh,
but yeah,
that's amazing. I balance this line when I teach of not wanting to push people too much, but I just want, I don't like to set limitations on what people can do. And of course, like through safety in yoga, there's definitely that, but I always try to encourage people in yoga, in life in general, just to not set those limitations of like telling ourselves what we can and can't do, because, things change in our body. And of course, like something we were able to do years ago, we might not be able to do now, but something that we weren't able to do years ago, if we just try, like, where can we go from there? And so when people take my class, if they want to use blocks or straps or whatever helps them in their practice, I am all about it, but I don't want to put those limitations, like you have to use this in order to do this because you haven't done this before. I always just like to let people explore their bodies, their own, what it feels like to move in their body with their mind, with their breath, and just see what happens. Yeah.
Well, and that whole concept of placing limitations upon ourselves, that, I mean, it was a lesson that it probably took me a long time to learn in life.
Yeah.
I didn't see all the ways that I did it, and this kind of speaks to like yoga's kind of like life, right? I mean, it is, but, and I talk about that the limitations on this podcast, because, what I really want for the show is for, someone to be inspired by a story to just be who they are or be what they want to be. And I think so often there are things we want to do that we don't think are possible because of those limits that we don't even entertain, that, we could just go do it.
Right.
And
like the one thing that's stopping us is our belief that we can't do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or shouldn't or whatever. And, I just think we deserve to be who we are. And, what were you going to say?
Well, you said or shouldn't. And that's a word that I've been trying to like eliminate from my vocabulary, because I think in that word, we do that to ourselves so much, of what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and what others should be doing. And that right there, like with that, we set so many limitations, or just like, judgment on ourselves by using that word, I find. Yeah. And I have to like consciously catch myself daily of like, oh, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. And it's definitely a practice of just becoming more aware.
Yeah, there's an expression, shoulding on ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and there's, I think what you're talking about, there can even be shame attached to it.
For sure.
Like one of the big ones for me that I talk about is sleeping in, which I don't really do. But when I would occasionally, for the longest time, I'd like feel bad about it.
Yeah.
On a Sunday morning for sleeping until 10, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and until one day it hit me, like, I don't have to feel bad about this.
Right.
I'm not,
no one else is putting
I'm not that little kid anymore.
Right.
Whose dad is saying, get your ass out of that bed. You're not going to sleep the day away. Because that's where that came from. I still have trouble. Yeah, you do?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just have trouble. I think it does come from like our childhood, maybe, but just of like resting, like when it's a beautiful day outside, that need to like get up and do things, where why can't we just like rest and relax?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and part of that's our culture too. That's just kind of overworked and under-rested.
Right.
And, that is something like you see Ariana Huffington is beginning to talk about the value of sleep and the value of rest, and how, our workaholism isn't even really productive.
Right.
It makes us less productive. And, going back to like the whole thing about this podcast, if we're who we are, if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, it's easy. It flows. It comes naturally. We don't have to exert ourselves. Not as much anyway, not even nearly as much. But yeah, that a lot of people get lost in that need to always be doing something. And really, when they think they're living, they're really avoiding.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that happening.
Mm-hmm. And there's I find like a lot of force in that too. If we do just like sit back and kind of let go of the need to force things or to control things, and we just, do the next right thing for ourselves that help get us to our next goal, and we just keep working on that, then the outer forces of like, I don't know where all the extra stress comes from. I find for me personally, if I just am focusing on the next thing for myself and let go of like, well, I have to be here at this time. Like it all just ends up happening without the stress anyways.
Right.
We're going to be there on time. It's going to happen. So,
or if you're not, you're not.
It's okay. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So. Well, yeah. And that's a lesson that I've managed to learn over the years, that, it doesn't matter how much I stress out, like everything's going to be okay anyway.
Right.
And for me, that's a spiritual thing, and trusting that. And then, when you can do that, then you can relax. And there's another saying that, I thought of as you brought this up. I have a buddy who lives in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and it's a Latin American expression. He who wants no soup gets 3 bowls. So it's the idea that I know for me, like as a little kid, I wanted to be so good at baseball, and I was good, but I put so much pressure on myself to be good that I couldn't relax. It took me a long time to just relax, and it made it harder. I made it harder because I wanted it so bad, and we'd like push things away, where if we can just sit back and relax, it comes, we attract it.
Field of Dreams. Do you remember that movie? And I don't know. And yes. And I didn't even mean to pull that up, because that is a baseball movie reference, isn't it?
Right. It is. It's baseball. It was a baseball field. Yeah.
I don't know why I watched that so many times when I was younger. But that quote, if you build it, they will come. I remember when we started the studio, and, it was really my aunt's, encouragement is a gentle way of saying it, but she really, really made me finish my teacher training. I didn't really, being in this, it's not even being a spotlight as a yoga teacher, but just being like up front and speaking and, being the one to be in control of the room, I guess, or center of attention, really makes me feel quite uncomfortable. And it's taken years and years to get over the nerves that come up when I teach. So it took me a while to do my teacher training, to finish it. But when I was just finishing it, she found a space for us to open up a studio. And she's like, this is it. This is what we're doing. And I was like, oh no, I don't think so. And, and she would just, she just encouraged me to trust. And every time when we opened it, I always had that thought, okay, if we build it and we have the right intention, and we know that we're coming from a place of love, we're coming from a place of, we just want to share with what yoga's done for us. We want to share with the community, and hopefully other people can be touched by this practice as well. And every time we added in either new classes, we brought on new teachers, or we did different programs, I just remember having that feeling of like, you just have to trust this process and just trust the next step. And if it's something truly that you feel in your heart is good, then it will just continue to happen. At least, I'm not saying everything in my life has been good, but when I trust in the good in my life, then good also comes.
Yeah. So how old were you when you started to practice?
I got seriously into yoga probably when I was 21. But I had been taking yoga classes on and off with my mom and my aunt, both, probably since I was like 16, 17. But about 21, my aunt and I started going to Bikram. We started going like once it started, we started going like every day, 6-7 days a week. And then from there, it just translated into vinyasa, and then, did my teacher training and started teaching. And then I got into, Ashtanga yoga, and that is still my practice now. And that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah. And now you've traveled to India, right? And
I did. I went to India. It was 2 years ago now. In 2018, I went for the month of August, to study with Sharat Joyce, who was Patabi Joyce's, grandson. And Patabi Joyce is the founder of Ashtanga Yoga, which is the foundation of a lot of our vinyasa practice. So when I got into Ashtanga Yoga, into Mysore practice, you can go and practice over in India with Sharat, who's now like the head of the lineage. But you have to stay a month, and some people stay even more. And to me, I stayed for 5 weeks, but that was probably one of the biggest commitments to the practice that I have done and had done thus far.
Just to be gone that long?
To be gone that long, and all I was doing was yoga. Yeah. to be gone that long, I guess, was just one of the biggest. I still can't believe that I did that. I had before I didn't have my daughter, but I am married, and we had our dog, and I have the studio, and just my family, and to leave everything for 5 weeks was tough.
Yeah. One of the things I want to do is, what's it called? You guys hosted Keno McGregor.
Yeah.
And she talked about her meditation practice, and she talked about the retreats that she does.
Oh, Vipassana retreat.
Vipassana retreats.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I really want to try that
10-day
too.
silent retreat.
Yes. And what's wild is there's no journaling, like there's no creative outlet, I think. There's no journaling, like you can't get whatever's going on out. You have to just sit with it for those 10 days.
Yeah, I think I would really benefit from that. I think that'd be I definitely want to do it. And I'm probably in a better position now to do it than I've been in a long time, but not quite yet. Maybe in 2021 though. But I've looked into it. Like you have to apply and, be accepted, and there's always a wait list. But I have friends who've done it like many times over the years.
Really?
Yeah.
I think the first time you do it, you have to do the 10 days.
Yes.
Yes. And then if you want to go back, because I remember looking at it too, and I was like, oh, 3 days, that's kind of manageable.
Right. You can do that the second time, but not
Yeah.
But that's, when I look at my child, I could have never imagined wanting to do something like that when I was a kid, Probably like you going to India for 30 days to do nothing but practice yoga, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing what our lives become, isn't it?
When I was, I think when I was 23, well, when I was younger, I always wanted to travel. And I was fortunate to be able to, my father lived in London. And so I would go and visit him in the summer, and we would travel through Europe. And so I was able to get into that like travel bug when I was younger, but I still always was just always intrigued by different cultures. And I remember when I was 23, like right when I started getting into yoga, I really, 22, 23, I wanted to go to India, but I didn't know, it's such a big place, and I never really knew like, well, where would I go or what would I do? I just had this idea of going there. And for it to like come true, and for there to be like a specific place that I could go. And, you had to apply and also be accepted. And there was only, I think 300 students that month that were accepted to practice for the month. And 4 of us from Yoga Path got accepted. So I was, we were all 4 of us going to go either way, like on our own. But it was just so special that 3 other girls that I had known from here and had practiced with for a long time here, that we all went over there together.
That is really cool. So before yoga, was there another plan for what you were going to do with your life?
Yeah. So yoga was never really, this was never in my plan whatsoever, but it's just kind of happened this way. And I'm so happy that it has. But when I was 18, I moved back down here from Jacksonville and went to FAU. And I went for 1 year, and I just, I didn't like college in the sense. I didn't really like going to classes. I just wasn't very focused when I was down here. And so I decided I was going to spend the summer. And then when I came home, I didn't know really what to do. I wanted to be back with my family. I wanted to be back in school, but I didn't have any money, and I didn't have a job. And so I started working in the restaurant business again, but I also went to school for massage therapy. And I thought I'd go to school for massage, and then I would work as a massage therapist, go back to school, get my bachelor's. And then I wanted to go to acupuncture school, which there's one down in Fort Lauderdale. So that was my plan. And I finished massage school, worked at the Boca Resort for probably about, I think, 5 years. And I was in school finishing my bachelor's when we opened up Yoga Path. But then Yoga Path kind of just became my focus. So I did massage for I massaged for a few more years. But now it's just the studio.
So what'd you study at FAU?
Business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then it all worked out, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I kind of I have been able to, I wouldn't even say I've used what I learned in school because I can't even remember, but my aunt has been such a wonderful mentor that has guided me through this kind of world of being a business owner and directing the studio and all of that.
Yeah. Well, you seem to do it pretty well. I mean, the atmosphere is great and, there's a lot of love over there, which to me is really what's most important. Yeah. Anyway, then the rest works itself out,
Yeah. I mean, we all are going to have our different experiences in the practice. And what I find about, before we opened the studio, I remember going to a few studios down here. And I live in Delray too. So I live in Delray, but we have the studio in West Palm. And I remember going to a couple studios down here in Delray. And I had been going to the studios for probably over a year and a half. Probably the same class times, the same teachers. And I remember walking in there and never the teacher, whoever was at the desk, they never remembered my name. And one teacher would always actually call me, "Oh, you're Angie's friend." And so in class, she would say, "Angie's friend, do this, do that." And I thought, if when we opened up our studio, I just wanted to, and I still do that to the teachers. I just want to make sure that everyone feels like they're seen because they are when they come into our space. Like I can tell you every single person that has walked through the door. If I can't remember their name, I would remember their face when they've come to the studio, just because I want people to feel that. I just want there to be a space where people feel seen,
Yeah. Well, and one of my sort of things in life is if I can't, and it's hard for me to remember people's names sometimes.
Yeah.
It takes me a while I have to use it and see them on a regular basis. But like clients, if I can't bother to get their name right or pronounce it right or spell it right, how much could I possibly care if I can't even get their name right?
Yeah.
And I never understood why, like I've had colleagues who all hear them mispronounce somebody's name in perpetuity. Like they just never say it right. And it just baffles me how someone could be like that. I just don't get it,
And most of the time the person is probably just being polite and just like not even correcting the person.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one teacher would always call me Chelsea. And I was like, I have never met somebody named Chelsea that I don't even know why anybody would think that was the name, but.
Well, yeah. I mean, just because you spell it with an A, I mean, doesn't everybody spell it with an A?
I think
I don't think I've ever seen it spelled with a Y. I don't think.
There's different ways. Yeah. But it was just, just another thing where I remember, and it's just kind of like ingrained in me. And I think our teachers and just our community, just for people to acknowledge one another and not let those things kind of pass by, because, it's okay if you mispronounce someone's name, I'm sure, but it's also very nice if you just take the time to learn it,
Well, and my experience was, it was like a celebration for the teachers when they saw me coming because I was new and I was getting it. It meant a lot to them. So of course they remembered my name. It mattered to them that I was doing this in my life, which is really cool. It is. And you guys have some great people over there, and great teachers who, it's interesting when you practice yoga and you go to different classes and you see how different people teach. And like right now, I couldn't go to one of your classes. Like,
Oh, you could.
no, well, I could, but it wouldn't feel good. I mean, I'm not ready. I'm not in vinyasa shape right now.
Mm.
But, like the lower key, like a Whitney class, a yin class, or,
Yeah.
and she's got this really soulful sort of presence that is, just different. It's like, it's like the difference between Saturday and Sunday, and she's Sunday,
And coincidentally, she teaches Sundays.
Yes, I know.
She teaches Sunday morning, and she truly is just such a gem. And I feel so lucky because we do have such an amazing community, and a diverse group of teachers. And I think each one of our teachers brings something to the table of their own accord. And Whitney just brings something magical. Like when you're in her presence, it's just like she is so present with you that you feel like you're the most important person in the world.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to make sure she listens to this. Yeah, she's been great. She's, and when I went to her class for one of the first times, it was a Saturday afternoon. And, on the way there, I was in this conversation on the phone with somebody that was just kind of being really shitty.
Mm-hmm.
And then I walk in there and it's like, oh, well, there's this, like I don't have to deal with all that. There are people like this in the world. And it just was an eye-opening thing because it was such a glaring difference from one moment to the next. And she's so full of love. She really is.
Yeah,
she's great. Is. So tell me about this Lululemon thing. You are now a Lululemon ambassador?
Yes.
What's that mean?
They have been such a wonderful company. I think in September. So it was just like we were just coming out of quarantine with the studio and just in general. We tried to reopen sometime in May, but we reopened in September, and Becca, the manager of the store, reached out to me and just wanted to kind of get to know me because they were opening up a store in Rosemary Square. And we're very close to that, like in proximity. So she, I think, was just reaching out. So we just did a little Zoom call and then met up a couple weeks later, and they asked me to be an ambassador for the store. And so my picture is up in the store in Rosemary Square, which is just crazy to me. But they've just been wonderful. There's many different opportunities through that company that I'm learning about, but I don't know. I'm learning all about it still.
Okay.
It's all brand new. Yeah.
So is yoga what you see yourself always doing as a career, or do you have other aspirations? What do you have on your heart?
I love being with people, and I think helping people or just facilitating some sort of healing. That's where it came from in massage, was just being able to help people feel better. And so I'm not quite sure if I enjoy teaching yoga, and I love it. And I love making that connection with the community. And I think for a long time, I probably will be doing this in different capacities. This year, I'm trying to focus on creating what I miss is our teacher training program. And I'm trying to recreate it to where we can have a virtual option also, and to how does that look? Because we've done it the same way, and I am a creature of habit. So trying to figure out new ways this year has been testing me, and it's been great because I'm just learning different avenues to where I can still reach people and help people and figure out and it's not in the same way that it has been before. So I definitely don't know where I would be without yoga, or where I'm going to be without yoga. Um, but I'm hoping to just keep somewhere, be within this community. I don't know if it's always teaching like a 9:30 vinyasa class, but probably more focused on doing teacher trainings and doing different workshops or things just in that educational field of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a different world trying to think of these things with coming after having a baby. I think it's been a whirlwind this year with having a baby and then COVID hitting, and I just kind of feel like now everything's starting to settle, and so I don't know really what my next step will be.
Well, one of the things I'm hearing is, I mentioned in a recent episode that, our trajectory in life isn't always linear.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one of the things that I had to get over was, I didn't know when I was 18 or even 23 what I wanted to do with my life. Not really.
Right.
I mean, I knew there were things I wanted to do, and I felt bad about that. Like there was something wrong with me because I didn't, because you're supposed to know, which in hindsight is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But I still felt it. But what I came to learn is that I'm a person who I feel my way through things, just like I did at Yoga Path,
Yeah.
And I've done that in my career. I've always been someone who's got to be proud about where I work if I'm going to work for somebody else. So that I had to feel that, but I just kind of showed up and then responded to opportunities that led me to where I went instead of some formula.
Yeah.
And I don't think everybody's that way, but it sounds like you're that way.
I kind of, this year has been changing and evolving, to where I've kind of just allowed opportunities to arise. And it goes back to where, what we were talking about in the beginning of just, not like putting my head down and doing the work, but like putting it out there of where I want to go and just being present with myself day to day and allowing the opportunities to unfold without like a forced idea of where I want to be or where I have to go. I think I've spent growing up, I was a very, black and white type of person. There was always a right way and a wrong way, and, something I had to do and something I wouldn't do. And I've tried to, I think through my yoga practice, live in the gray space. And so a lot of that is just trying to be present in the moment and go with the flow of things, the flow of life.
Yeah, that's something I talk to people about a lot too. And it's difficult for all of us on some level, but that black and white thinking, which is really prevalent in our culture right now.
Yes.
I mean, you look at politics, everything's very black and white. And that is actually one of the core symptoms of codependency.
Yes.
It is. People don't, we don't think of it that way, but it is. It is. The inability to be in the mystery, be in the gray. Right. And, I've learned that mystery part of it, I mean, that's where the excitement comes in.
Yeah. That's where the magic is, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't, I've tried to plan out so many days of my life in the past, and I would just go through a mental checklist or even a written checklist of okay, I got this part done. I got this part done. I got this part done. Okay. At the end of the day, I can finally relax now that it's 10 PM and I checked everything off my list, but I lost that, the enjoyment of it. I was just, okay, I have to do this. And then this thing is next. And then this thing. And And it can suck you dry, I feel like.
Yeah. I was at like this retirement party one time and with a bunch of colleagues, and I was talking to this woman who's, I mean, she's probably been in the studio at one time or another. She lives over there, and she's run behavioral health care facilities, owned them, and, she's pretty brilliant. But I was talking to her, and I shoulded on myself. And she's like, no, don't, don't talk to yourself that way. That's not true. And she said, I'm going to tell you about this book, and you got to get this book. And it was, this author, Sean Anker, who is at Harvard. And Harvard has a school that studies happiness.
Oh.
And this book was called The Happiness Advantage, orange dust jacket. And basically it's the idea that we always have that carrot dangling out in front of us. I'll be happy when I achieve this.
Yeah.
It's always, I'll be happy later, whatever the milestone is ahead of us that we're waiting on, whether it's the promotion or the raise or kids or whatever. But in our culture, we put it out there in front of us, away from us. But the problem is there will always be something else to pursue. Mm-hmm. So when are we going to just be happy? And what he learned in research is that happiness doesn't come from success. The opposite is actually true. Success comes from happiness. And, like if we're at our best, we're going to do well. We're going to be productive. And, one of the things I think is really exciting is that, like, I see on social media and out in the world, people are more open to spirit and all those less concrete things that really make life rich and deep. I mean, I feel like we're going in this direction where things are really getting better,
I definitely agree. And then I sometimes wonder too that, is it also just that I'm realigning with people that believe and think a lot of the same ways that I do? So I see more of that, or that I'm thinking that way so that I'm projecting that outside of me. Because I do know that, we can recognize that there's also bad in the world, of course. Right. But I think that there is more of this, a softness to life where people are accepting that there's something inside of all of us that makes us very unique and special, but that part in all of us is also in each of us. Like, we are all the same, right, and we're all in this, and there has to be some sort of cohesion with our energies if we're all here right now together, and if we can all just see something a little bit bigger than ourselves, mm-hmm, with that spirit or with that energy connection, I think that will be in a better place, mm-hmm, moving forward.
Well, and one thing that I've seen that has stood out to me about just that sort of spiritual progress overall that, mm-hmm, I think we're making is, being a guy who's been sober since he was 23 years old. Like, now there are all these people who are like, just decide they want to be sober. And it's not that they, mm-hmm, have to be, it's that they want to feel and they want to live more deeply. And like, there's this, mm-hmm, whole movement of people out there who don't drink because it's not what's good for them. Right. Yeah. And that didn't exist when I was 23 years old. That wasn't there.
No.
And it would have been nice if it was. I mean, not that I have any regrets or anything, but I just think it's awesome that, there are people out there carrying that message that, hey, I had a really good time drinking, but I couldn't be who I was that way. So I stopped, and you can do it too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's exactly, I don't know if I really had a great time drinking, to be honest, but I stopped because it wasn't serving me. It wasn't, there's nothing that was coming out of it that I felt good about. And all the things that I was doing to work on myself, I felt like I was just like, going out on a Friday night, then I would just feel like down in the depths of sorrow the next day. And then, so what was I doing during the week if that's what I was ending my week with? So, I think that there is a lot more of that in society, to where you can connect with people, on that more just like we're all working to, get to that next level of vibration, or just like that next, I sometimes it can get a little bit into the ether, but, like how can we just become, for me, how can I become more present and more available for the next moment, I guess.
Well, and having lived through that and being a substance abuse counselor and then going to Yoga Path, there's actually people who I knew before who struggled with sobriety, wanted to, went through the ups and downs of it, but, really found their place in yoga.
Yeah.
And that's, I love that. That's just it was just an eye-opening thing for me. And, because one of the things that I think is really important in terms of how I approach clients is, I don't know everything. And just because I did it a certain way doesn't mean you have to do it a certain way, or that I think you should do it a certain way doesn't mean that's the only thing that's going to work. Ultimately, you have to find what's going to work for you.
Right.
And how are you going to be happy?
Right.
Because like you were talking about, you were happy with the rest of your life. So why screw it up on Friday night and feel like crap for a couple days, right?
I couldn't. Yeah, it was just, it wasn't serving me in my life. And I guess, looking back at it now, it was I think the practice of yoga, the more intense my practice got and the more in depth it got, the less I wanted, I didn't want things to make me, alcohol just made me feel awful, like physically, mentally.
Yeah.
And I just didn't I knew how good I could feel, that I didn't want to be, I didn't want to feel that way anymore. And, I think having a practice, my Ashtanga practice was 6 days a week. And so having that kind of consistency and discipline in my life has always been something that, with discipline, I thrive. And so, my practice, I would wake up every morning and practice at 6 a.m. till 8 o'clock or so. And, then I'd get on with the rest of my day. But having that consistency, honestly changed my life. Like having that discipline in my life has changed the way that I am as a person, I would say.
Yeah.
But my brother is someone that has struggled with sobriety for majority of his life now. He's 35, and everything kind of started in his teens. So this about 2 years ago, actually right when I got back from India, was another time that he lives in Massachusetts now, but he admitted himself into a hospital, mental hospital, was having like a schizophrenic breakdown. And then a few days later, got out, and then the same thing happened and was Baker acted, basically, or their form of it, in Massachusetts. And from there, he just, decided he obviously had to make a change, and he was wanted for something also. So anyways, what is it called when you basically, he went up to the jail in Massachusetts in this tiny town that he lived in, was like, look, I committed this crime. This is how you know I did it. And then he was arrested.
He turned
So
himself
he
in.
turned himself in. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't think of that.
Mm.
But he turned himself in, which to me was like such a big cry for help, because if you know, he had many opportunities of being in a halfway house or in a treatment center, but being in jail, it was just such a cry for help, because he couldn't live his life the way that he's been trying to live it before. So this was a way for me that I just, you know, I can feel myself almost shaking talking about this because it's so close to my heart. But I was there for him, and I haven't been there for him many times, almost maybe because of the way that he's made me feel. And instead I took myself out of this and was just there for him. And so I just started sharing like things that I've learned through yoga. I started sending him different books that I've done, that I've used in teacher trainings, or just things that have like really helped me. And he was in jail for a year, and we practiced every single day. I would carry him through a practice. I would tell him the moves. He would write them down. I'd send him the book so he could see pictures of it. And that was the first time in, I would say, 20 years that I had really seen like the clarity in my brother, and not even seen, just spoken to.
Right.
And it was through yoga, and like nothing has ever helped him. And so it was just such this beautiful connection, that he was able to make to like feeling the energy moving through his body and staying within that sobriety. And he, you know, when he got out of jail, he did relapse, and he's back now in a more long-term facility for treatment. But it's still his practice that he keeps coming back to. Like still daily, he has his yoga mat and he still practices every single day. And like that consistency has helped him stay sober. And it just, I just find this practice to be like such an amazing tool for people anywhere in life, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, when I started to practice, and like I have colleagues all over the country, and a lot of times the only time I'll see them is like at one time a year at a conference or something.
Mm-hmm.
And after I started to practice and showing up at places like that and seeing these people, they'd be like, what are you doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, keep doing it, you know? Like they could
Mm-hmm.
visibly see a difference. And it's not really that I was unhealthy before, but I think, you know, I probably kind of lit up, you know, like there's a shine that comes to us from it. It's really, and, you know, there's so many things about yoga that, well, I was thinking the other day, like I was stressed out over something stupid and just carrying around this energy. And I was like, man, I got to get back on the mat. Like, because that makes me feel better.
Yeah.
And it's given me, like I mentioned, baseball. When I was a kid, still to this day, I never feel more in my body than I do with my feet in the grass or on the infield or on a baseball diamond or with a ball in one hand and a glove in the other or a bat. Like I feel like really grounded and in my body. And, you know, I just kind of longed for that, especially once I realized it, you know, like playing catch with the kids outside on a Sunday afternoon. It's like, wow, this feels great. I haven't felt this way in a long time. But yoga is really the first time, aside from on the baseball diamond, where I ever really felt completely in my body. And, you know, so once I started to practice and develop those muscles that you only develop if you're practicing yoga. And I just felt so rooted and strong and just good, you know, it just feels really good. And, you know, I'll get back into vinyasa condition so I can I will make it back to a Chelsea class sooner or later.
I think I think what's beautiful about the practice is that there's so many different elements of yoga and different styles of yoga and different things that can support our lifestyle. And I think for the longest time, I had it kind of skewed, and I created my life to support my yoga practice. And so, I would make sure I was in bed at a certain time, or I would miss out on just different parts of my life to make sure that I was on my yoga mat every morning at 6 a.m. And I think that we have to also make sure that the practice of yoga is supporting our life. So when we have those ebbs and flows, when we can't get to our mat as much as we'd like, or we're not practicing hot vinyasa, or, we're in the middle of a pandemic and studios are closed. So, we can still find the elements of our practice and find ways to feel rooted and grounded if we can't make it there. And it's okay that it doesn't look the same as it did a year ago or 2 years ago. But that it will always kind of flow in the direction, and it'll keep ebbing and flowing. And eventually you'll get back to wherever it is that you want to be in your practice,
Yeah.
At least that's the reminder I keep telling myself too. But it is true. We want our practice to support our life, and in whatever capacity that means.
Well, and now you were starting to say how you didn't realize what your classes were like. And
so because of COVID and because of the quarantine, we're no longer assisting in classes. So for safety reasons, we are just like, when I teach, I stay on my mat. So I'm actually practicing with the students now, which is new because I've always just taught off the mat and walked around and helped assist and just kind of guided the class that way. So it's definitely been a new experience to have to practice my class while I'm teaching it. And so it's been a lot of fun because I'm also dying with the rest of the class.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know if the class has changed to make it a little bit easier, but there's definitely days where we don't hold poses longer because I can't hold them longer.
Well, you're not holding boat poses as long as...
No. No, it's definitely, it's a whole new experience practicing, but it's been fun because I feel like I'm in it with you guys.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like, you're happy,
Yeah.
and, which is awesome. And then, you add to this life that you've built for yourself, a child. And I remember hearing that you were going to be a mom and just being so happy about that because I knew you'd be a good mom. And also it's just such a great experience. It's just and you just don't know until and I always hated hearing people talk about parenthood that way, but it's just like nothing else. And, it's like, I'm sure you've experienced this. It's like the world just opens up in a different way. And all of a sudden, all these people talk to you who didn't used to, like you go to restaurants and people strike up conversations with you when that would have never happened before.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you're part of a club all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when you sent me that, you sent me a message when I think after I saw you at the studio, and it was so kind because becoming pregnant and becoming a mom were definitely I was very fearful of this next step of my life. Just because it was just change, and change has always been something that's a little bit harder for me. So I really appreciated that because it was so sweet and kind. And you're right. Like all of the cliches that people talk about before you're a parent are so true. Like when you're not a parent, you hear them and you're like, okay, I get it. Yes, I should sleep now. I should do this. I should travel. And now I'm like, oh, those are all so true. And like my friends that are pregnant, I like want to tell them all these things, but a whole new world has opened up. And I just feel so lucky to be a mom and to have gone through this and to be able to like share my life now with this beautiful ball of energy. And my daughter is she is magnificent. And I can't imagine life any other way.
Yeah.
And I think like, well, what did I do with all of my time?
Right.
Like, where has it gone?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, but it definitely is it's the best thing in my life. And my going through it this year. So we hit quarantine like right in the beginning in March, and I had my daughter Aspen in January. January 6th was her birthday. And, so right after she got her like first couple shots to where you can like really bring them out into public without fear of like anything really happening is when we shut down. So the first few months of her life, like we were able to really spend so much time together. And my husband works a lot and travels a lot. And since we were in quarantine, he was working from home, and he still is working from home, which has just been the biggest blessing for our family because we've been able to spend so much time together at home, like in this first year of her life. And I feel so blessed to be in my life right now.
Yeah. Good.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve it.
No, thank you.
So when you look back on all this, there must have been a time in your life when, you needed some encouragement or advice besides when you were pregnant, because, on some level I knew you needed to hear that. And that's why I said,
yeah.
It's true. I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't true, but I knew,
No.
So when was a time other than that, like when you probably most needed a word of encouragement or support, and when would that have been? And what would you say to the younger Chelsea?
That would probably have been when I was about 20, 21 years old. Which is why I found yoga. I was going through a really hard, difficult time. I was leaving a probably very unhealthy relationship, and I just didn't know where to go. I had so much of my life wrapped up in this identity of what I thought was going to happen. And I just felt so sad and lonely, and there was no space to go from there. And I started practicing yoga, and through that, I slowly crept out of that year by year. But if I was to go back now to tell that little Chelsea, would just be to trust the process, to just lean into the process. And I think I still have to tell myself that these days, just be okay with where I am today. And back then that was not in a place I would want to be, but where I was then has brought me to where I am today. So I just constantly still need to remind myself to lean into the process. And so I would tell her that same thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. I've enjoyed it, and it's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a while,
yes.
right?
Yes, for sure.
I'll have you know, you're the first yoga teacher who I asked. I've had on a couple other ones since then, but you're awesome. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to getting back over there,
Yeah, you're welcome anytime. Come on in.
All right. Thanks, Chelsea.
And I appreciate this too. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for listening to The Path to Authenticity. If you'd like to learn more about our guest, you can find links in the show notes or visit our website at thepathtooauthenticity.com. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, if you have a suggestion for a topic, or you know someone who would make a great guest, email the show at thepathtooauthenticity@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you know someone else who would enjoy the show, or even just a particular episode, please share it with them. Every little bit helps. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider becoming one wherever it is you choose to listen. You can find the show on Patreon, where by becoming a patron, you can hear episodes before they're released publicly. You can gain access to supplemental content. There are other benefits in the various tiers. Visit patreon.com/thepath-to-authenticity. Join our Facebook community or follow the show on Instagram, both at The Path to Authenticity. We also have a YouTube channel. You can connect with us on Twitter or Pinterest. To hear the songs from this and every episode, you can find the Path to Authenticity playlist on Spotify. Obviously, there are a lot of ways you could be spending your time, so I appreciate you spending some of it here with me. I'm Tom Gentry. Thanks for listening. Be nice.
Great, honeybee.
The Path to Authenticity is powered by Equivox. For digital marketing and web design services, visit equivox.com.